Hello guys, this is Zombie and welcome back today for a new episode of Napoleon series. This is the 5th episode and let's go.
An Epic History TV PMF Productions collaboration. In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age. October 1796. 6 months have passed since General Napoleon Bonaparte took command of...
Forget to say, but the episode for Epic History TV, that's Napoleon in Italy, Battle of Arcole. I don't know how they pronounce it in Italian, but yeah.
The French army of Italy. In that time, he's led a series of brilliant operations against the Austrians and won a string of battles. Now he appears close to final victory. He's driven Austrian field forces off the plains of northern Italy, back towards the Alps. While his troops have the great fortress city of Mantua, the key to Italy, under close siege. Mantua's oversized Austrian garrison is nearing starvation and riddled with disease. Napoleon appeals to its commander, Field Marshal von Wurmser, to surrender. The brave should...
This isn't that surprising, is that because in the old times there were more death from sickness and stuff like that, from sickness, coldness, heat, than from actual casualties of battles.
Be facing danger, not swamp plague, he jibes. But Wurmser is a tough old veteran. He will not yield while any glimmer of hope remains. And he knows that to the north, Austria is gathering fresh troops to march to his aid. True, many are Grentz battalions, a type of Habsburg frontier militia, poorly drilled and short of officers. But they help raise the strength of the Austrian field army to 44,000. And they have a new general to lead them, Feldzeugmeister or Lieutenant General Józef Alvinczi, the 61-year-old Hungarian.
Yeah, overrated guy, in my opinion. I prefer Wurmser.
Was once military tutor to Emperor Francis himself, and is regarded as diligent, sharp and brave. He and his staff draw up plans for a fresh offensive to rescue Wurmser and Mantua. Alvinczi and Kostanovic will lead the main column, 26,000 strong, from Friuli to Bassano, then onwards to Mantua. Davidovic's corps, reinforced to 18,000, will retake Trento and push south through the Adige Valley. The two forces will link up at the earliest opportunity. Meanwhile, Wurmser, who can muster just 12,000 fit men from the Mantua garrison, will launch powerful sorties to pin down as many French units as possible. Napoleon, by contrast, has received very few reinforcements from France. His weary divisions are suffering from shortages and sickness, and will be outnumbered on every front. Alvinczi begins his advance on the 22nd of October. The following day, the heavens open, drenching troops, swelling rivers, and reducing roads to mud. For the time being, Napoleon is content to observe the enemy struggle forward in such conditions, knowing the effort will exhaust his infantry and disrupt supplies. On the 2nd of November, fighting breaks out north of Trento, where Napoleon has ordered Vaubois to attack. He wants to keep Davidovich bottled up, but Vaubois is heavily outnumbered, and his attack fails. Vaubois begins pulling back to Caliano, while Massena gives up Bassano and withdraws towards Vicenza. But now Alvinci's advance becomes strung out, slowed by the heavy rain and poor fitness of his recruits. And it is against Napoleon's nature to remain passive for so long.
Yeah, he will strike. Napoleon doesn't wait any time, doesn't lose any time. Every hour, every minute, every second counts, and he's always proactive. So he works all day. Like I think he slept like 3 or 5 hours max every night. So yeah, always working, and taking decisions very fast. So here you can see the attack from the Austrian side. It's very low. It's disrupted by when the weather is bad and it rains. Well, Napoleon waits because it's the best thing to do, but at the first opportunity, he rushes on the enemy, and and there is nothing about the weather. Oh no, it rains, so it will disrupt his lines of communication, his supply. It will take 2 times more, two times more time to. It's in English what I said, but you get the idea. To go on the battlefield. No, there is no such thing. It will rush to the battlefield, and it will be very fast.
As the Austrians cross the Brenta, he orders Massena to attack General Liptay's division at Fontanive.
It's not like they have a lot to cross, but...
While Augereau attacks Hohenzollern at Bassano. The French launch dozens of separate assaults. But for all their poor march discipline, the Austrian recruits stand their ground and fight hard. With around 3,000 casualties on each side, the Second Battle of Bassano is the bloodiest day's fighting so far in the Italian campaign. And
surprising, because he said that they are of very great quality, but apparently not so bad.
Failure for Napoleon.
The new recruits.
Hours later, he receives dire news from Vaubois. During heavy fighting at Caliano, some Croatian troops get behind the French line, triggering panic and a rout.
It's not going so well yet.
Vaubois loses nearly half his division, killed, wounded or missing, before he can regroup at Rivoli. The French are falling back on all fronts, and unless Napoleon can conjure something remarkable, he seems destined to suffer a major strategic defeat.
So here's I'm not satisfied with you. You abandon yourselves to panic. You were driven from positions where a handful of brave men might have stopped an army. Let it be inscribed on their colors. You are no longer part of the army of Italy. Yes, I know my English. That's great. You can put subtitles on if you need that to understand.
Napoleon's position is perilous, but his enemy's cautious pursuit affords him some respite. 4 whole days pass while Alvinczi and Davidovich coordinate their next moves. It's not a delay Napoleon would have tolerated if the shoe had been on the other foot.
Yes, as I said, Napoleon doesn't waste any time. Every second is precious, so 4 days, that's too much. Well, they have the momentum and the advantage, yes, yeah. they threw away their advantage.
When the Austrians finally
At least against Napoleon. Against someone else, maybe not, but with Napoleon, every second you waste, it's terrible.
advance, it's bungled. Hohenzollerns' vanguard approaches Verona to investigate reports of a French retreat. This isolated division is too tempting for Napoleon to ignore. He orders Augereau and Massena to attack. They inflict 400 casualties, but Hohenzollern escapes to a ridge near Caldiero. The next day, Napoleon orders renewed attacks. But conditions are atrocious. The French struggle uphill into driving rain and hail, their boots slipping in the mud, under fire from Austrians dug in on the ridgetop. Around noon, Colonel Dupuy's 32nd Demi Brigade finally gets onto the ridge. It looks like the French may be able to lever the Austrians out of their position.
So you see, after there will be some change, but here, despite the conditions, the rain, they still pushed the defense and started to win. So here you can see the perfect illustration of what I said, that weather was something Napoleon could overcome, as he was so good, so efficient.
But then, the Austrian army begins to arrive in force to support Hohenzollern's hard-pressed division. The French are in danger of being outflanked on both wings. They take up new defensive positions and hold the line until darkness, when Napoleon cuts his losses and orders a retreat to Verona.
Still, you see, despite the situation, is able to stabilize the line and then withdraw.
It has been an unequivocal French defeat. Napoleon's first in battle. The following day, he writes furiously to the Directory in Paris. He has no doubt that they are to blame for his defeat, for repeatedly failing to send reinforcements. We may be on the verge of losing Italy. None of the expected help has arrived. The army of Italy, reduced to a handful of men, is worn out. The heroes of Lodi, Millesimo, Castiglione and Bassano have died for their country or are in the hospitals. The men have nothing left but their reputation and their pride. We are abandoned in the depths of Italy. But despite his apparent despair, Napoleon has already devised a plan to strike back. A breathtakingly bold move that will spawn one of the greatest of Napoleonic legends.
You see, despite his legitimate complaint, he doesn't let it as an excuse, like, oh no, we don't have enough men. Also, he doesn't talk about it, but they lack money and supply and many stuff. And yet, he still fights, and we will see that probably triumph despite all of this. He's just making legitimate complaint, but doesn't play victim and do nothing. He stays proactive. That's right mentality.
With the Austrians converging on Verona, Napoleon decides to risk everything on a daring surprise attack. Leaving Macquart to cover Verona, he will circle south with the rest of the army, cross the Adige River and swing north, threatening to cut Alvinci's lines of communication and capture his artillery, baggage and supplies. Such losses will force Alvinczi to abandon his advance. Marching overnight, Augereau and Massena arrive undetected at Ronco. Augereau's men cross the Adige on a pontoon bridge and begin moving north. But with marshland on all sides, they have to stick to the narrow, raised causeway, just 20 yards.
It's a worst place to be stopped. That's very risky. You need to go forward very fast.
Wide. And when they reach Arcole, where they must cross the bridge to continue north, they find it held by 2 Croatian battalions. Horribly exposed on the causeway, and under heavy fire, the French troops take cover behind its reverse slope. Reinforcements are sent up, but they too are pinned down by the weight of fire from the far bank. Colonel Lannes had discharged himself from hospital that morning in order not to miss the battle. He now attempts to lead a charge, but is hit in the leg.
Badass, under this Lannes, he will become one of Napoleon Marshal later on, and one of his best friends too.
The fiery Augereau refuses to accept defeat and orders another attack. But his men are exhausted and demoralized, with 3 generals wounded. The attack at Arcole has stalled. When Alvinczi hears gunfire from the south, he assumes the French are making a feint to divert him from his own planned attack on Verona. But then comes alarming news that the French have crossed the Adige in force and are behind his left flank. He sends 2 brigades to attack the French bridgehead and diverts Mitrovsky to reinforce Arcole. Massena's division...
You see this normally on paper. This is a completely horrible situation for Napoleon. Another general would have been completely crushed by that, but we will see what happens.
Moving northwest to protect the flank of the advance, runs straight into the Austrians at Bionde. At first, the Austrians have the better of it. But a disastrous friendly fire incident triggers panic, and Massena drives the Austrians back up the causeway.
What a blunder.
Napoleon is increasingly concerned by the hold-up at Arcole. If they cannot break through, Alvinczi will have ample time to redeploy and prevent any advance. He now orders General Gueux to take 2 regiments, cross the Adige at Albaredo, and lead them up the eastern bank of the Alpone River to hit Arcole from the south. He himself rides to the bridge to try to get the attack moving. He finds hundreds of French troops sheltering behind the causeway, unwilling to face the Austrian fire. General Augereau grabs a standard and begins to advance. This highly romanticized depiction was painted 2 years later. "Grenadiers," he cries, "come and seek your color." In reality, none had the courage to follow him. Then, the commander of the Army of Italy himself draws his saber, picks up a standard, and runs forward. There is withering fire all around. Several men fall wounded. His aide-de-camp, Colonel Murat, is killed. Another aide-de-camp, a Polish officer named Sulkowski, recalls, "The soldiers saw him, and none of them imitated him."
There were already Polish soldiers, I didn't know, in the French army, okay.
I was witness to this extraordinary cowardice, and I cannot conceive it.
But one thing that surprised me is not that it didn't work at Arcole, but why he did a similar thing at Lodi, the Battle of Lodi that happened before, and he was successful in crossing the bridge. his army was very courageous, surprisingly courageous, because usually you don't cross a bridge this kind of situation, but they did that Lodi, and quite successfully. So I would say that Lodi is the outlier, not Arcole. That's more understandable, because soldiers, they aren't robots. They still had and still have the fear to death, and if they know that something leads like 99% chances that they will die, they won't do it. So, but I'm wondering what's the difference between these two battles, where it worked once, but not the second time. I'm wondering.
The French infantry refusing to follow their officer.
If you have the answer, don't hesitate to tell it in the comment section.
The assault on the bridge ends in abject failure. A well-timed Austrian counterattack drives them back down the causeway. In the rout, Napoleon's horse loses its footing. He tumbles into the swamp and has to be hauled out by his aides. That evening, General Gueux launches his attack on Arcole from the south. The defences are less formidable on this side, and his men fight their way into the village. Arcole, at last, has fallen. But that night, Gueux's men are ordered to pull back. Napoleon is preparing to retreat. If, as he expects, Davidovich has continued his advance down the Adige Valley, Napoleon must withdraw now or face encirclement. His bold manoeuvre appears to have failed. Then, at 4 a.m., Napoleon receives a report from Rivoli that changes everything. Not only does Vaubois still hold the town, he hasn't even been attacked yet.
See, again, these Austrians, they take so much time to do everything that you can be like, yeah, it's the Austrians, they are bad or whatever. But no, they were, in fact, normal army. That's the opposite. That's Napoleon that wasn't normal for the time. It was like 4 times faster than everyone else in taking decisions and moving his troops. I mean, I exaggerate a bit, but you get the idea. Yeah, you see, within a few days, they still didn't attack Rivoli. That's crazy.
Napoleon's line of retreat remains secure for at least a few days more. It's all the reassurance he needs. He immediately cancels his retreat and issues orders to attack. Napoleon has lost the element of surprise, and Alvinczi is now planning his own counterattack. Overnight, his troops edge forward. Provera to Belfiore di Porcile, Mitrovsky back into Arcole. Both armies are on the move before dawn. Massena sends skirmishers into the marshland. When the Austrians arrive, bunched up on the causeway, they make easy targets.
Big difference with the Austrians. They copied them, but not their blunder.
After a sharp fight in which an Austrian general is killed, Massena's men are driving the enemy before them. Augereau, however, cannot get close to Arcole. The causeway is still swept by Austrian musket fire and canister from across the Alponi. Napoleon orders troops to cross downstream at Albaredo, but the Austrians now have 2 battalions guarding the crossing point. French attempts to float or swim across the river come to naught. Day 2 of the battle ends in stalemate. Many soldiers have to camp amid the marshes and get what food and rest they can. Napoleon will try once more to break through. But he is running out of time.
Yes, that's... He needs to be fast. And by the way, nothing to do with the video, but I plan to stream soon. So I don't have a real schedule yet, so I can't tell you the days and the hours. But yeah, I plan to do several streams a week. Some will be history reactions, and some will be more free, like I learn English, do react on non-historical stuff or playing video games, stuff like that. So I will do a mix of someday special history, someday more free. So if you are interested to follow my journey, you can follow my Twitch account. I will put it in the link in the description.
Davidovich, who by now has received several urgent requests from Alvinczi to advance, finally attacks on the 17th of November. Vaubois' outgunned division breaks. The Austrians take Rivoli and 1,000 prisoners, and nearly capture Vaubois himself. With Davidovich on the move at last, Napoleon must force a decision at Arcole or retreat. The bridge at Arcole has proved too tough to crack. So Napoleon switches tactics. Augereau's division will cross the Alponi and attack Arcole from the south in force. A column is sent 10 miles south to cross at Legnago and then race back up the eastern bank
More original.
to support him. Massena will advance up the causeway in support, while also protecting the left flank.
Two flanks.
That
One
night,
small, one
the French assemble a pontoon bridge over the Alponi. Augereau's division begins.
Will it work though? Because the Austrians already saw that he did his sneaking flank from behind strategy the other day, so maybe they are prepared now. And you can see here, they are at least prepared for these ones, but not prepared for the, from what we can see and accept, not prepared for the long flanking.
Crossing before dawn. But at sunrise, Austrian gunners in Albaredo spot the bridge and score a hit, knocking it out of action. Only the 51st Demi Brigade is across, though it gamely begins to advance on Arcole. Massena's advance is also hamstrung by a broken pontoon bridge. To add to the crisis, the Austrians launch an attack on the fragile French bridgehead. Napoleon gathers every available gun to blast the Austrians, who fall back under a withering barrage. The bridges are quickly repaired. But as the French advance, they encounter stubborn opposition on both sides of the Alponi. A bloody seesaw battle surges back and forth along the causeways. Neither side can deploy its troops nor gain an advantage. Around 3 p.m.
That's truly a hard-fought battle.
The French column from Legnago arrives, threatening to turn the Austrian flank. Just as Arcole seems about to fall, the Austrians launch a ferocious counterattack across the bridge. Brigadier General Robert is killed. His troops fall back in disarray. The panic is contagious. Augereau's men lose their nerve and fall back to the bridge. The moment of crisis has arrived. But while the enemy has just used his last reserves, Napoleon can call on Massena's unengaged troops, including the elite 32nd Demi Brigade.
And if you remember, that's exactly what he did at Mantua against Wurmser, when he escaped to Mantua, Wurmser, it was when Wurmser had committed all of his troops on both sides, because Napoleon was attacking both sides of Wurmser army, and then when he had all the reserve on the side, Napoleon committed all the troops that he had to throw in the middle. So Napoleon is, and you will see it also, he is very careful in using his reserve only when the enemy has committed his last troop, or even sometimes, even when the enemy does that, he doesn't commit. So that's one strategy that we don't think a lot about Napoleon. One specification we don't think a lot, characteristic more like. But yeah, it's one thing that he does. Keep your reserve only for the very necessary moment at the right timing, and it can be very deadly. You will see here.
Their sudden counterattack turns the tide. Massena's men sweep up the causeway, taking scores of prisoners, as Augereau's division resumes its advance. As they approach Arcole, Napoleon arranges a small ruse de guerre. 25 of his elite escort sweep in from the east, blowing bugles to feign a mass cavalry charge. In the evening light, it's enough to scare the remaining garrison into abandoning the village. As the French continue their advance, Alvinczi orders his exhausted, demoralized army to retreat east, to Montebello, to protect its lines of communication. The 3-day Battle of Arcole has been a messy, bloody affair, with no great tactical flourishes. Napoleon's margin of victory is narrow, and a third of his army are casualties. But he has done enough, for now.
I find him a bit harsh because, as you saw, the reserve tactics think that he was starting to retreat because he thought that he was encircled, but then when he knew that he wasn't, he came back. Also, his flanking tactics from, his double flanking, we would say, on the same side, stuff like that. No, we can't say that there wasn't a good tactical side on the French side, on Napoleon, on his generals and officers. So, for Napoleon's standards, yes, that wasn't on a bright level, but it was on very good level still. If you see the situation they were in and the tactics they had to pull out to win, that's a bit harsh from Peak History TV. It was still a good victory.
Alvinczi may be withdrawing, but Davidovich remains a threat. The next day, Napoleon sets off at his customary pace with Massena's division to reinforce Vaubois. Augereau takes a different route to threaten the Austrians' line of retreat. The confusion that follows between Alvinczi and Davidovich verges on farce. Alvinczi writes to his corps commander, informing him that he will support him by resuming his advance. But Davidovich, having heard of the defeat at Arcole and now directly menaced by Napoleon, is already retreating. On receiving Alvinci's letter, however, he tries to turn his army around, leading to such chaos that he has to immediately countermand that order and resume his retreat. The end result is that both Austrian armies are soon withdrawing. And with exquisitely poor timing, gallant old Wurmser chooses this moment to launch his supporting attack from Mantua. He does at least secure some much-needed supplies, at a cost of 800 casualties. It has been a bruising campaign for Napoleon.
For sure.
By some estimates, he has lost more men than the Austrians. He has suffered his first defeat in battle and won a costly, messy victory at Arcole. But he has beaten the odds and thrown back the enemy.
Finally, he says it.
What's more, his heroic conduct at the bridge at Arcole will soon take on a life of its own. Artists and pamphleteers turn a slightly embellished version of events into a sensational piece of personal PR that captivates France. With Napoleon's active encouragement, the world is witnessing the birth of the Napoleonic legend. A powerful force that will inspire loyalty and devotion to his personal PR.
Bonaparte. So he was still called Bonaparte. Because, in fact, his name was Bonaparte, and then he franchised it, making more French, and made it Bonaparte. But I didn't know that he still had his name at this point.
That captivates France. With Napoleon's active encouragement, the world is witnessing the birth of the Napoleonic legend. A powerful force that will inspire loyalty and devotion for many years to come. For now, both armies settle into winter quarters, as December brings bitter cold and heavy snow to northern Italy. In Mantua, the Austrian garrison is near its limit. Starvation beckons, though Wurmser is determined to hold out to the last. The Austrians will have one last chance to save the city. A final offensive to decide.
You see, Wurmser respect to him. That's the coalition general that I respect a lot, especially after there are some great generals too, but yeah, Wurmser, especially in the early days, that's my preferred coalition general.
The outcome of the war in Italy.
He has the mental stuff. He's very good.
A big thank you to Pierre.
So that's the end of the video. Don't hesitate to go on their channel. I will put a link in the description. As always, you can also support PMF production. Besides Petit Story TV, you can also support my channel. Like the video, subscribe, and I tell you, see you next time.